They said marriage was a partnership. Two hearts, one dream. But somewhere between vows and bills, that dream turns into a quiet contract of sacrifice. She gives love, time, body, and peace, while he keeps the comfort, the control, and the cash. She smiles through it because good wives are supposed to, even when the cost is herself. If love is a home, why does she feel like a tenant paying rent with her soul? We're naming what no one names: how some marriages don't just take love, they take everything. Now, let's define the quiet mechanics of that exploitation and how it begins. Toxic love rarely arrives as violence. It comes as a charm. At first, he is dazzling, attentive, generous, hyper-present. That's the idealized phase. Then the tone shifts. Small jabs, cool distance, moving goalposts, the devalue. Next comes the silent punishment or sudden disappearance, the discard. When she begins to pull away, he returns with tears, vows, perfect words, the apology. And just when she exhales, the cycle spins again. Repeat. This is trauma bonding. When pain and comfort alternate, the brain stops seeking safety and starts chasing relief. Stress floods in, cortisol. Then, in tiny doses, he offers tenderness, just enough dopamine and oxytocin to keep hope alive. She isn't addicted to him. She's not addicted to the man. She's addicted to the tiny bursts of love he gives between the pain. The intermittent reward rewires her. Calm feels strange. Chaos feels like home. She confuses butterflies with anxiety, intensity with intimacy. That's why leaving isn't just a choice. It's withdrawal. To walk away is to detox from the very chemicals that kept her hanging on. So what else holds her there, beyond chemistry? When the cycle steals more than peace, when it starts eroding identity itself, let's examine how she begins to lose her sense of identity. Category 1. Trauma, bonding, and chemical dependency. This isn't just love, it's chemistry on a loop. When he wounds her with coldness, criticism, or silence, her body floods with cortisol, the stress signal that says you're not safe. Anxiety spikes, sleep breaks, appetite fades. Then he returns, softer voice, warm hands. I'm sorry, I was overwhelmed. In that instant, her brain releases dopamine, relief, reward, and oxytocin, bonding, tenderness, pain, then comfort, fear, then closeness, shock, then sugar. That alternating pattern is the hook. In psychology, it's intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive schedule on earth. You never know when the good will come, so you cling tighter, scan harder, and work more. She starts living for the next apology, the next good day, the next version of him that reminds her of the beginning. Calm feels empty now. Stability feels boring because her nervous system has been trained to equate intensity with intimacy. And here's the quiet tragedy. She begins to believe suffering is proof of depth. If it hurts this much, it must be real. If it costs this much, it must be rare. If it breaks her and then holds her, that must be love, right? Meanwhile, her world shrinks to micro moments of relief. The text back, the half smile, the night he doesn't drink, the morning he says, "We're okay." She recalibrates her standards around survival, not respect. She's living on emotional crumbs, mistaking survival for connection. Biologically, it makes sense. Her brain is not seeking joy, it's chasing the end of pain. The apology becomes the drug, not the love, The hug after the hurt feels euphoric because it ends the alarm he set off. She's not addicted to the man. She's addicted to the tiny bursts of safety he sporadically allows. Over time, this roller coaster rewires her tolerance. Red flags don't feel red. They feel familiar. Quiet partners think suspiciously. Healthy attention feels off. She doesn't trust calm because calm has been the silence before the storm. And so, she stays. Not because she can't see the harm, but because her body has learned to call the harm home. But addiction isn't the only chain that holds her. There's something even deeper. The erosion that happens underneath the chemistry, where the cycle doesn't just hijack her feelings. It starts rewriting who she believes she is. Let's talk about identity and how, in a toxic love, a woman can forget her own name. Category 2. Identity, loss, and self-worth collapse. It doesn't start with "you're worthless." It starts with "you're too sensitive." A small correction here, a smirk there, a strategic silence when she needs answers most. When she names the hurt, he shrugs. When she asks for clarity, he withdraws. That's the gaslighting cycle. She reaches, he retreats, she doubts, he denies. She breaks, he calls it drama. Every round teaches the same lesson. Don't trust your feelings. She starts editing herself mid-sentence. She censors tears, repackages anger as "I'm just tired." When he stonewalls or walks out, the punishment is clear. Emotions equal distance. So she learns the rules. Don't speak, don't feel, don't need. Memory is next. He rewrites events with calm confidence. That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Faced with his certainty and her confusion, she chooses the safer belief. Maybe it is me. Soon, she doubts not only what she felt, but whether she felt it at all. Piece by piece, the mirror fogs. She stops choosing clothes she loves, music she likes, and friends who ask real questions. She trades her inner compass for his weather report. The smaller she becomes, the more peaceful things seem, because the conflict can't find a woman who no longer shows up. She doesn't stay because she loves him. She stays because she no longer remembers who she is without him. When identity thins, dependence thickens. His moods become her map, his approval, her oxygen. She measures good days by how little space she took. And here's the quiet math of eroded self-worth. When you believe you are too much and not enough at the same time, you will work endlessly to prove you deserve the bare minimum. You'll call crumbs care. You'll call silence stability. You'll call disappearing being easy to love. By now, control doesn't need raised voices or locked doors. It runs on her doubt, her guilt, her practiced invisibility. She polices herself so well that he barely has to. And once self-worth collapses, control becomes effortless. But the trap doesn't end at identity. It deepens into fear of leaving, of failing, of starting from zero. Let's look at how that fear is manufactured and maintained. The cycle of isolation, threat, and learned helplessness. Category 3. Control, fear, and learned helplessness. Control rarely announces itself. It arrives dressed as protection. I just don't like your friends. Your family stresses you out. Let me handle the money. It's easier that way. At first, it sounds like care. Then one day, she realizes she hasn't seen her closest friend in months. Her phone habits have changed. Her bank account isn't hers anymore. Every door that once led to freedom now loops back to him. Isolation doesn't happen with locks. It happens with guilt. He doesn't need to forbid. He just needs to make her feel like contact is betrayal. Each time she chooses quiet over conflict, the cage closes a little tighter. And when every exit disappears, staying starts to look like safety. Not because it's safe, but because it's familiar. That's learned helplessness. When your nervous system, exhausted from failed escapes, stops trying, the brain rewires itself to prioritize survival over change. She's not lazy or blind or foolish. She's running on survival code. After enough punishment, the mind starts whispering, "It's better not to move. It's better not to dream." She could leave the cage, but she's been taught the sky is dangerous. Freedom feels like falling, and pain feels like home. Even if she opens the door, fear keeps her perched on the edge, because every time she tried to fly before, she got hurt on landing. So, she stays still, not out of love, but out of exhaustion. Not because she doesn't see the door, but because she doesn't believe she deserves to walk through it. And then comes the cruelest trap of all, the one that keeps her tethered even when her wings remember how to move. The trap that doesn't live in fear, but in hope. Let's talk about the hope loop, how the same promises that once made her fall in love become the very chains that keep her from leaving. Category 4, the hope loop. Hope. It's the most beautiful and the most dangerous lie in a toxic love. She tells herself, he wasn't always like this. She replays the early days like a highlight reel. His laughter, his touch, the way he once said, "I can't lose you." And she believes him. Not because she's naive, but because she's human. Because every memory of his kindness is proof that he can be better. That somewhere inside the cruelty, the man she fell in love with still exists. When he apologizes, she sees a glimpse of that man, and it's enough to reset her hope. He said he'll change. He promised this time is different. So she waits, believing she just needs to be patient. She works harder, loves softer, sacrifices deeper. And when nothing changes, she doesn't get angry. She gets guilty because the cycle taught her that when he fails, it's because she didn't love him enough. Maybe if I love him harder. The human brain clings to potential, not reality. It remembers the warmth more vividly than the cold. It edits out the pain to protect itself. And so, she stays trapped in a psychological loop, grieving a relationship that doesn't exist anymore, waiting for a ghost to come home. She stays, not for the man he is, but for the man she hopes he'll be again. That's why she calls it love when it's really longing. That's why she forgives what breaks her, because she's not chasing the present, she's chasing the past. And the cruel irony, hope feels noble. It feels loyal. It feels like proof of love. But in truth, it's the leash that keeps her bound. Because to give up hope would mean admitting that the dream died. And that kind of grief feels unbearable. Until one day, the scales tip. The hope breaks louder than the love. She stops waiting for the version of him that only exists in memory and starts looking for the version of herself she left behind. And that moment, that quiet snap inside her, becomes the beginning of something powerful. Awakening. let's step into that moment, the turning point where survival becomes self-recognition. It never happens in a dramatic explosion. It happens in silence, on a random Tuesday, while folding laundry or scrolling through old photos. She pauses on a picture of herself from years ago, smiling, alive, full of light, and whispers, "I don't recognize that woman anymore." And in that moment, something shifts. Not anger, not hatred, just grief. Because she finally understands that the person she's been trying to save isn't him. It's her. The realization doesn't come because she stops loving him. It comes because she stops tolerating the pain. She sees how she's been shrinking to fit his comfort, apologizing for her emotions, rationing her joy so he wouldn't feel small. She remembers how it felt to laugh freely, to rest without fear, to exist without being edited. And for the first time in years, she lets herself imagine a version of peace that doesn't require her disappearance. At first, the thought terrifies her. Peace feels foreign, like silence after constant noise. But slowly, she realizes that quiet isn't emptiness. It's safety. It's power. It's the sound of her own voice coming back. The day she realizes peace isn't boring, it's freedom. That's the day she starts coming home to herself. She begins small. A private bank account, a hidden notebook, a single no. And each act of defiance plants a seed, not of rebellion, but of rebirth. Her nervous system, once hijacked by fear, starts to believe in safety again. Her heart, once dependent on chaos, starts craving calm. And her mind, once clouded by guilt, starts remembering who she was before the breaking began. It's not a clean break. Healing rarely is. But it's a beginning. The first breath after years of holding it in. The first step out of survival and into self-respect. And that's where healing begins. Because once she remembers she has the right to peace, the chains of control start to loosen. And she finally learns that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Now, let's talk about what healing truly looks like, and the kind of love that doesn't exploit but restores. Here's the truth we came for. The real reason women stay in toxic relationships isn't weakness. It's wiring, conditioning, and hope misused against the heart. But knowing the reason is also knowing the exit. And the first step out is made of words. If words can break her, words can also heal her. You don't have to explain your pain to anyone who made you feel it. You just have to decide, I'm done bleeding for someone who never bandaged me. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink to fit a smaller life. A healthy relationship will never demand your silence as proof of your loyalty. You deserve a love where your nervous system can finally breathe, where your laughter isn't rationed, where your needs are not treated like crimes. Maybe you've been told you're too much, too sensitive, too needy. Hear this. Your sensitivity is awareness. Your needs are human. Your voice is evidence you're still alive. Love that punishes. Your truth is not love. It's control wearing a costume. If you're standing on the threshold, half in, half out. Let this be the hand you hold for one more step. Start with something small and sacred, a boundary you keep, a sentence you write in a quiet notebook, a plan you make for safety and support. Healing is not a grand gesture. It's the steady practice of choosing yourself where you once abandoned yourself. You don't have to become fearless to be free. You only have to become faithful to your own peace. Because peace isn't boring, it's freedom. It's the sound of your life returning to you, one honest breath at a time. If you worry you stay too long, remember, shame belongs to the person who hurt you, not the person who survived it. If you fear no one will understand, remember, there is a chorus of women who do, and they will meet you where you are. If you wonder who you'll be without him, remember, you were someone before the breaking, and she is still here, waiting at the door you are finally brave enough to open. Before we part, speak these truths to yourself, even if your voice shakes. I am allowed to take up space. I do not owe anyone my silence. What I feel is real. I choose peace over patterns. Now I want to hear your voice. If this story felt too real, tell me in the comments which part spoke to you most. Your words might be the light someone else needs to feel less alone tonight, or tomorrow morning when they finally decide to leave. And if you believe love should heal, not exploit, let's make sure this message reaches the people who need it most. Click like, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about emotional truth, healing, and self-worth. We're building a space where survivors don't have to whisper to be believed. You don't have to explain your pain to the person who caused it. You only have to honor it and choose what honors you back. Because healing isn't forgetting the pain, it's remembering who you were before it and choosing her again and again. In our next video, we'll go deeper into how to rebuild after leaving, the practical steps for emotional safety, financial independence, and nervous system repair. For now, keep this with you. Your future is bigger than your fear, and your peace is worth protecting.